Ugh. Fine. Plot summary. Amy Smart plays Kate Stanton, an advertising agent in her mid-30s on a blind date after having just gotten out of a long-term relationship that she still isn't quite over. While the date goes well enough, she has to leave early to pick up her dog from her ex. And despite the date going mostly pretty well up to this point, Kate's potential suitor is a bit offended that she's cutting him off early to spend time with her ex, and leaves in a huff. Kate also finds that her ex is now getting engaged. Between her date having gone wrong, her ex getting married, and also passing out and hitting her head in a department store, Kate decides to go home and call this Christmas Eve a wash. Unfortunately for her, though, this Christmas Eve has 5 words for her. So Katie has to keep waking up from the moment she recovered from passing out in that department store and reliving Christmas Eve 2011 11 more times until she finally gets the perfect day out with the new man of her dreams. During this time, she learns progressively more about this handsome devil, namely that he's not much of a devil at all, and is more of a saint than anything else. The man's a hockey coach for a disadvantaged youth, and also has a lot of guilt over the fact that he wasn't able to save his now-deceased wife, who died in a freak accident at home. During this time, she also starts making connections with people she'd previously written off. She warms up to her father's new wife, who was the one who set her up on this date. She comes to really appreciate her after having not wanted to get to know her after the death of her biological mother. She also starts talking with her neighbor across the hall from her in her apartment building, and she finds out that she's a pretty great baker and a very kind person. She also talks a bit with another guy at the bar she's meeting her date at, and decides to set him up with one of her friends when his original blind date doesn't show up. And of course, after 11 days of it still being Christmas Eve, the 12th time proves to be the charm, and Kate gets her perfect first date and has a nice time with all of the other people in her life and in his when the clock finally strikes midnight, and then it moves ahead to 12:01. It's Christmas Day and the time loop is over, and Kate is free to chart a new course with her new man. End of summary. Pros. I wouldn't necessarily describe Amy Smart as Kate as a likable or charming character, but she's very relatable. She doesn't want to bother with the guy who could be Mr. Right. She just wants to get back together with the guy she thought was going to be her forever and ever, and is pretty darn crushed when she meets with him on Christmas Eve and realizes that he's moved on. He still cares for her, she's still special to him, but she doesn't have that same place in his heart anymore, and is pretty happy with the way things are turning out. And when she realizes the loop is a thing, at first she doesn't want to bother with self-improvement, she just wants to stew in her misery and be her worst self, because she's still being bitter about losing out on her ex forever, but at a certain point she decides she needs to let the dang past die and look towards her future. And the more and more time she spends stuck on December 24th, the more she realizes that this Mr. Right might actually be right for her after all. And that's what the ultimate point of the story is. Opening yourself up to new possibilities and new realities you had never considered before. Forget about the comforts of the familiar, forget about the depression of being incapable of accessing what was familiar, set fire to your ships and past regrets and be free. And on the subject of Mr. Right, we have Mark Paul Gosselaar as Miles Dufine, a character who's more or less had the same discoveries as Kate does throughout the movie, but for a much deeper reason. He didn't break up with a girl who moved on from him, his wife died in a household accident, and he's had to keep asking himself, what if things were different? But he's also come to accept, while he'll never stop wondering about that, it's futile to be just consumed with regret and accept that it's better to just live per day and work on a better tomorrow. Like, say, coaching a junior hockey league for underprivileged youths. Or just going on a blind date because there's no point in refusing to love again. I also really like Kate and Miles as a couple. I think they're a good match, and I think Miles is good for Kate. I think the best relationships are the ones where you can encourage each other to grow as people. And while I think Miles definitely does that for Kate, I can see Kate doing that for Miles after this story is done. Kate is inspired by Miles' selflessness and decides that she wants to be like that, and in turn, she tells Miles he's doing a good thing and should keep doing it. Positive influences feeding into each other. It's good stuff. Cons. You can tell this was a 2011 release because the movie opens with a Jordan Sparks Christmas song, and I gotta tell you, the moment I heard that tune, I just went, wow, I hate this movie already! It wound up being a lot better than I thought it would, but my god. So here's the problem with doing a movie where you have such a small time loop. In Groundhog Day, you see so many freaking loops of Bill Murray's Phil Connors living February 2nd over and over and over again. And you get to see so much of the world around him in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. You get to see him do so many different things. You get to see him be confused, bitter, and debauched. But because 12 days is only 12 days, they kind of have to speedrun everything. Amy Smart's Katie gets to be a little bit debauched, but Amy munching on one chocolate donut is nowhere near as debaucherous and pathetic is Bill Murray shoving an entire piece of cake into his mouth in one go. Katie buying a sports car and going on a joyride in one 30-second clip is nowhere near as debaucherous as Bill literally stealing from a Brinks truck. I realize I'm only focusing on the debauchery here, but I think this being a romantic comedy, a little debauchery could go a long way as far as the comedy aspect goes. I find the movie in general is a little light on good comedy. The only real consistent laugh, in my opinion, is the woman at the department store who Katie always sees when she wakes up, who keeps telling her, "I spritzed you and you passed out." I get why the movie is only 12 days to play on the Christmas theme, but 12-hour days is nowhere near enough time to play with, especially not for a TV movie. Final thoughts. Alright, I did it. I managed to squeeze some thoughts about this movie from my brain. I even managed to make some positive ones, too! No, that's not the attitude of this movie, though. No. My sister asked me to do this movie, and you know what? I get why. I mean, I joked about it in those texts I showed you, but for starters, this woman's name is Kate, but her nickname is Katie. And then you get into the fact that the woman is learning to connect with her stepmom, and her love interest is working with underprivileged youth. And then you got my sister, whose name is Katie, who hangs out with our dad and his new wife all the time, who used to volunteer with the Boys and Girls Club. So yeah, I can completely understand why my sister connected with this movie so much. But for me personally, it's just not hitting me. I just think this movie is a little bit boring, and I don't care for it. I'm going to give 12 Dates of Christmas a 2.5 out of 5. It is a perfectly fine piece of entertainment, and if it connects with you, then I sincerely hope you're enjoying it. But it just didn't connect with me, unfortunately, and that's all. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. And if you did, feel free to check out some of my previous reviews. If you're in an festive mood, check out my previous Christmas-themed videos. I just did a video about Will Ferrell's Elf, and I've done videos from last year and the year before where I talked about The Muppet Christmas Carol, Mickey's A Christmas Carol, and Jim Carrey and Robert Zemeckis' A Christmas Carol, alongside the Home Alone franchise. If you want something a bit less festive, I've been doing a series of reviews for the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise, as well as plenty of comic book movies to boot. Check out all of those and stay tuned for my next review, which will be for something much more well-known. 1983's A Christmas Story. Please be sure to like and subscribe. Have a great day, everyone. Woodstock, out.